And good evening. This is a presentation of HNGN News, The Crime Line with John Leiberman. Tonight we have very special guests with us. We have Gil and Dan Harrington with us. Their daughter was brutally killed back in 2009. We're going to get to them in just one moment. I am John Leiberman. It's nice to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, I want to bring on our very special guests, Gil and Dan. It's nice to see you two.
Good to see you.
Hi, John. Thanks for having us.
Morgan, your beautiful daughter, was murdered in 2009. You searched for her for the better part of 3 months. What is that like? Just bring my audience up to speed. What is that like for a family?
You know, I think it's the most difficult part of having someone who goes missing, even worse than finding out that they have been killed. During that period of time, you know, you kind of bargain with everybody, including, I think, the heavens above, to try to figure out how you could maybe bring your daughter back. And it was, I think, the most difficult time for the two of us. You also become, I think, very vulnerable to other people. You know, we've had many people call us during that period of time, psychics, private investigators, offering their services free. You know, if we give them the rights to the story, if it ever came to be, you know, a book or anything like that. So you really felt very vulnerable.
You know, John, for me, the missing phase also was the most difficult. You know, to swing on a pendulum between hope and despair 24 hours a day. And you don't want to quit on your beloved daughter, but our best case scenario was she was being held against her will. That's a terrible best case scenario. There are no rituals for the missing. You know, we are very fortunate to have recovered our daughter's remains, to have had a memorial service, and to honor her in some way. Many families are not so lucky as we.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you waited so long for some hint of who did this to your daughter, and then finally, you know, the DNA matches with this case, with the Hannah Graham case just recently. I mean, what is that like when you find out that police may finally know who did this to your daughter?
I think it was such a, I think a relief for both of us, because once an arrest was made, it really took the whole reason that we've, I think, done all that we've done over the last 5 years. It's kind of made it come to fruition. We don't want bad things to happen to the next girl, and with this individual now locked up, we know that he's not going to hurt anybody else.
It came at a terrible price, John. I really did hope, you know, the genesis of Help Save the Next Girl was to save the next person that this perpetrator might attack. And we were not able to save Hannah. And I feel devastated about that. But I don't think he'll be out again. And justice is slow, but I think it will all sort itself out, and other women will be safe from him.
The suspect's name is Jesse Matthew Jr. Do you believe, Gil and Dan, that he is responsible for the murder or the sexual assaults of other women that we don't yet know about yet?
I would be, you know, my basis in this is nil, but it doesn't make sense to me logically that you start from age 22 and there's a charge, the Fairfax case, for abduction and sexual assault and rape, and then you do nothing. I mean, that's a young age. I would not be surprised if other cases come forward.
Dan, what about you?
Well, we know that he was involved with 2 alleged rapes at 2 of the local universities back when he was freshman and sophomore in college, and then we know of the 3 cases that likely he will be convicted of in the next several months. And it would surprise me too that I think people just don't put this kind of activity aside. Maybe he didn't kill anyone, but I can't imagine that he didn't take advantage sexually of other women.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, these guys don't just, quit and get a day job. They continue to offend and offend and offend and offend. What was it like when you saw him in the courtroom? Because I know recently there was a hearing and you actually got to look him in the eye. What is that like?
I went to the trial, John, and I was prepared for many things, but that it was really surprising to me that the word that I would use for his demeanor and kind of the sense in the courtroom was he was very nonchalant. It wasn't cocky, it wasn't brazen, but it was like walk in the park. There was no remorse there. I don't know if he's capable of that or not, but he was not avoidant. He looked at me and Sue Graham, who was sitting next to me, for a long time, and was very kind of brazen.
When you mentioned sitting next to Sue Graham, of course, the mother of Hannah Graham, how are you able to counsel other families? What do you say to Hannah Graham's mother? What can you say? I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
We have tried one of the many avenues that we have tried to help other victims through Help Save the Next Girl. We want to prevent, but as well victim outreach in other families. I think you have to give people space. Everybody's family does things differently. I think that the Graham's way of facing Hannah's abduction and murder is different than Dan and I chose. I think perhaps there are other families here in Virginia. Heidi Childs and David Metzler were murdered here as young college students around the time Morgan was murdered. And their family has been very reticent in the media. I hope that space has given them more spiritual and grieving work that they've been able to accomplish. We really, as caregivers, and felt that we needed to take care of other families and to try and change this dynamic somehow. But a big part of that is allowing people to find their own path, because it's a really individual journey, the way through the wasteland of loss and pain and grief.
We know that closure doesn't exist, but what would justice look like for you and your family in the matter of Jesse Matthew Jr.?
Well, from my standpoint, I'm probably more of a capital punishment person than Jill is, but of course none of these cases will be capital punishment. And I think as long as he is put away for the rest of his life, I will be satisfied. But it seems such a waste to have someone who has done what he's done even be able to take another breath.
How can we help save the next girl, which is the web address was on your screen. You saw it, helpsavethenextgirl.com. How can we do that?
John, we have done many different things to help save the next girl. We have activism on campus through many clubs to make personal safety and responsibility higher priority for young people. We have victim outreach. I'm very proud of the work that we have done legislatively. We just, in the last few months in Virginia, were instrumental in expanding the DNA databanks here in Virginia to include DNA submission for first-degree misdemeanor convictions. Yes. I think that's very important. We also helped push through a standardized response to missing cases so that there's a statewide network rather than kind of a patchwork approach to missing people, as well as we were able to have external reporting of sexual assaults become a standard in Virginia rather than that occur on on college campuses. And I think that's very important. So there's the personal, the more global and legislative, and then there's the personal victims outreach. I have been astounded in this process. We've worked really, really hard, but been very astounded what big changes two small people with little experience, but a whole lot of determination and love for their murdered daughter have been able to bring into effect.
And don't you think Morgan would be proud of her parents?
I think she would be amazed at what we've done in her honor.
Well, listen, Dan and Jill, we've spoken so many times over the years. You two are, the template for making good change in this realm of missing and murdered children. And I thank you again for your time, and I know our viewers do as well. And we'll be following the, obviously the situation with Jesse Matthew Jr. I hate even saying his name, but sometimes you have to put a name with the face of evil. And that's what we have to do here. But I want to thank you again, and we'll definitely see you again soon.
Thank you so much, John. 241. God bless.
And that's Gil and Dan Harrington, just a fantastic couple, again, searching for justice now in the case of 20-year-old Morgan Harrington, who went missing and was murdered in 2009. This has been a presentation of HNGN News. Thank you so much for watching. We will have more next week. Good night.